Hey everyone, welcome back to Taking Back Monday, where we are saying goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to a brand new future of work. My name is Alyssa Nolte,
And I'm Dr. D.
and we are going to have a fantastic conversation today. So, Dr. D, tell us, what is your origin story?
So my origin story, we have to take it back a few years, but I was very fascinated with leadership. And I was in a corporation or organization that wanted me to lead. And one of the first questions, so we had a committee as part of the leadership. So I was in charge of a certain program. I was probably in my 20s. It was sport embassy and a lot of pressure. And one of the first questions, when I wanted to move the program forward, one of the people, a male, said, "What do you know about leadership? You're a female," and I actually got triggered, and that was like a pivotal piece for me to say to myself, "How can I have these conversations in a leadership role and not be in a defense? How can I just own my space and create compassion so I can be the role model for communication?" And so what was exciting to listen is that I thought we can speak better to each other. We can learn how to have the leadership around us speak with compassion and speak with better communication. And so that really had me take ownership of, it's my responsibility to not get triggered and not settle. Those two things. I'm not going to settle. I'm going to help other people to be better in their communication, whether they're above me, lateral, or below. That's my passion now, is neurocommunication, which is a whole different phenomenon.
So we did not plan this, but it's so funny because your origin story is similar to mine. I shared it to you before we started recording, and like I hadn't heard it before, and you hadn't heard mine before.
Mhm.
So the fact that we both had semi-similar experiences where
Yeah.
a man told us that, as a woman we weren't allowed to do X, Y, and Z tells me that this is probably not an uncommon experience for women who are coming up in leadership.
Hmm.
And you and I kind of came to the same conclusion of like, okay, like I can't let him bother me, but also I'm not going to take it, right? Like I'm going to stand up for
Yeah.
myself. So tell us more about neurocommunication, and specifically, how does a woman who is maybe experiencing the same moment in time or moment in their career, how do they use that to their advantage to rise above and to move forward into their careers, communicating
Yeah.
well and keeping all of that in mind?
Well, what's so fascinating about neurocommunication is we have neuroscience to back it up. That's why I love it. It's not just saying communication. I'll take a communication class. It's really understanding your state, your trigger, and um, your rapport building. So we think, well, we have to defend ourselves. That already puts us in a defense. So what we want to do is have no resistance. Then there's no attack. So neurocommunication, we use certain specific words versus other words. All our words are based in the higher brain, not the mid. So something like, "You can't talk to me like that," is a mid-brain response. "Well, thank you for sharing, and let's move on to what's important," is a high brain neurocommunication response. You see how it keeps our state calm? We can still enjoy the process. And here's the other thing, Alyssa, if when we're using neurocommunication, we have more influence because we're starting to build rapport from the other person. We're not criticizing, we're not defending, we're not in contempt. Those are all what people tend to use when somebody says something. So it's really important when we're working with clients that we figure out what are their triggers and how they can work through that. 'Cause that is what changes the game, truly.
And I think it's important too. One, I love that it's backed in science and
Mhm.
not something that feels like a magic wand that you have to wave and figure out, or you have to go get a PhD in communications in order
Yeah.
to successfully use it. But I like that you specifically individualize it for their triggers, because everybody has different things that like really bothers people.
Yes.
So for me, you were allowed to criticize me all day long. I will take feedback all day long. I have no ego in that. Um, but I have discovered if you like downplay or try to minimize anyone on my team, I literally like feel the rage bursting up through my head because you can talk all the shit you want about me, but you don't say a word about the people that I work with that I value and that I respect. And I had to learn like, okay, if someone is going to give me feedback of any kind, constructive or not, about people that I work with, I have to like prepare to chill out about it and hear it and then take it for what it is.
Yeah, because we call that a protector trigger. I'm okay, but don't mess with other people. So when we get underneath that, we ask ourselves, there's really three questions. Yeah. What did that trigger say about my belonging, my capabilities, or my connection with people? And for that one, once you uncover that, so you already know that. So the key would be uncovering that and then working with it, because the trigger, as you know, really pulls your influence or ability to navigate other people. And that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
Really want you to be able to, and everyone, to navigate people. And we can't do that if we're not self-aware of what are the things. It's usually 3 to 5 things that will trigger us. So we call it our trigger loop. And it is customized because yours is going to be different than someone else. It's based somewhat on personality. So we always give someone the personality, we give them their unique abilities quotient. And it is learnable at every level. That's what's so cool about it. We map it out where they start and we say, this is the next level for you to do. And we pull words out of their vocabulary that will cause triggers. We'll just pull them out. We can't use these, but I will replace these with these. We
So
also,
so
what's really fun.
it's not just about figuring out how to not have yourself be triggered and like control your own response to these situations, but it's also you also help people figure out how to make sure they're not unintentionally triggering the people that they're working with. Is that right?
Yes. So you start with yourself. Then when you get yourself understood, you really can navigate other people. So we call them neuroclusters, if that's okay to say. That's the word I am termed. And what we teach them is how to use language to pull people in, how to use language to calm people down, how to not take their trigger personally, because it's not a personal thing. People get triggered by their perception of what somebody said. That's all a trigger is.
Right. And
It's a
it
lot of
might be
fear.
rooted in some history that you have no idea, right? Like if you come and
Yeah.
criticize a woman about the way her handwriting looks, for all you know, that's what her mom criticized her for her entire life. And now
Oh,
you just made her
yeah.
remember her mom.
Right. And what we want to do is just understand they're not even aware, like you said. And what we want to do is make sure we don't at all like add to the trigger. That,
Right.
so we ask good what questions is another thing. And that opens the door. It doesn't necessarily have to bring up the whole story, but it opens the door for them to release some of that while you're there. And then they suddenly start seeing you as a person that can navigate them. And you
Right.
build a lot of influence that way because you're being authentic and you're helping them understand that what you're saying is really not meant to also be a part of that trigger. It has nothing to do with that piece.
I like that you say, language to prevent them from having a trigger, but also language to draw them in and make them feel connected. Because
Mhm.
for a lot of us, we are just looking in the world for people who will see us and say, I get you. Right. And
Yes.
we're all looking for that, whether it's at work, socially, in our families, like all of those things. That is a base human want and
Yes.
maybe I'll go as far as to say need. But let me ask you this question. I have experienced people who I would say are very, very good at this and do not use it for good. I actually worked with someone who talked about how uh, he on purpose would tear people down so that he could be the one to build them back up
The
because
rest.
then he was their savior
Yeah.
in that moment. And like he was gonna make sure he would say something like, it's really important to make sure that we break people down all the way so that when we build them back up, they feel really connected to us. And I remember being like,
That's
you're
unethical.
admitting that out loud, like on purpose?
Yeah. And that kind of unethical, ends justifies the mean. There are some people that are out there. You want to avoid those and you definitely don't want to do that because People can tell that. We don't need it. It's opposite. Neural language, you're not tearing anybody down. You're doing exactly what you said. People want to be seen. And they want to be seen differently than you want to be seen. So we kind of go around, yeah, they want to be acknowledged for that. Or they really like us to be direct. No, that's not true. What we want to do is create like a bridge from their persona to ours and acknowledge them in the areas to be acknowledged. So for example, let's say if we have a certain person that is giving some acknowledgments to our team. What that tells us is that person actually wants to be seen for and recognized for the fact that they're a caring, giving person, and we want to acknowledge them back. So people give us clues of what honors them, what acknowledges them, and what sees how we see them. We just have to listen. And that's
And
what you're,
have enough, I mean, you already made this point, like, have enough self-awareness to
yeah,
realize, like, "Okay, this is how I want to be acknowledged. Now that I know that, can I see if anyone else is putting out the signals into our communication, and am I savvy enough to pick up on them, or do I have the skills, I guess, is probably the
yes.
right word, to pick up on them?"
And you said the right word. It's skills. It's not it's not a thing we just are born with. It's a developed skill of listening for the cues and stop communicating out of our worry about what other people think. It's really, I'm going to listen. I'm going to build rapport because I'm curious and I'm compassionate about that other person. Yeah.
I think that everything you're saying is really important, and I wanna hone in on the skill piece.
Okay.
Because I think there's a lot of people who assume that being empathetic and compassionate or being a great leader or being charismatic are things that people are just born with, which I believe is wrong. I think you can learn all of those things. So take us down the process. Someone is hearing this, they're listening to this podcast and they say, I need to be better at this. What is the first, one small step you would have them start doing in order to head down this path that you're describing?
Alyssa, you are spot on. It is a developed trait. So the first thing I do at the platform is we have them think of what are their major triggers so that we can start with them. And along that, I give them literally words that are words that you can use that will help here, and then pull these words out. So if we start with our understanding of self and have new words to replace what we're telling ourselves, we'll have a lot more space to make sense. So we will give them, instead of using this, use this. And so you're still authentic, but we are rewiring your language. So you're giving a very good, very clear message of how to move forward. Very concrete. And we need to do that with people so that it's attainable. Like our brain needs to see, what do you want me to do? So I can do that. Right. So we'll write those down in front of them. We'll say you can't use these and immediately go into the practice of leaning into the uncomfortable of switching your language based on your triggers.
What do you think is hardest for people do you think it's harder for them to figure out their own triggers and then change the way they react to it? Or do you think it's harder for them to change the way they speak to others to minimize triggering them?
I love that question. So let me think through all my experience. It, I think here's what I think. I think there are certain people that will get triggered, right? But they seem like they navigate people. So you could say, well, they're better at navigating people. But what it comes down to is it's harder for them to understand the trigger is not real, that you don't have to have that. Because there's some people that will get triggered and not, you won't see it on their face. And so they communicate kind of like that, but then they're still triggered. So I think that's the foundation. If you understand your triggers, understand that they're not true, you're going to navigate communication much better and authentically, not have to walk away from the conversation and breathe like, oh my gosh, right? I had to pretend because I didn't want them to be angry. There's a lot of pretending. I said this so that would kind of lessen. Softeners are not a great thing. Softeners and hedgers, people have learned to use those. That's not a great thing. That still means you're triggered.
Right.
Yeah.
If I am a leader of a team, so I'm a VP or a director or someone, and I have direct reports, and I'm hearing this and I'm seeing like, okay, we're having some dynamic issues inside of my team. We have very talented people, but we just have not figured out how we have not gelled, we have not meshed, and maybe it's because of this. How can I start to facilitate this process when I have people who report to me who either A might not be super bought in to this concept, or B maybe don't feel psychologically safe enough to have a real conversation about what is going on?
Oh, I love that, because that is a lot of reason why leaders won't do it. Well, I'll try to learn my thing. The way you do that is you introduce it at the knowledge level. That's why I like science. You introduce that these words are the words that we're going to start using, and we are going to stop with any gossip, because and you can say statistically what that does to our environment. But if you can share, we're all kind of we're on a journey, and we all know we want to get better. And here's what we have learned about neuroscience of words that we all can take away. You start on a knowledge, and you still hold in accountability around the knowledge. Like, we are not going to use these words. We're going to use this word, these words. It already starts changing the culture. It's very safe to start at that level. And when they see you role modeling that also, you start a foundation of knowledge. And then the next one is to build some phrases that they write above it that they want for their culture. And then that's when you build psychological safety. So at the same time, if you're a leader, you really want to dig in deep. So you're using more of those neuroclusters. And so your communication calms the environment, calms the culture.
So use the word environment, and that's actually perfect for the question that popped into my head, right? So if we
Mhm.
think about like the concept of an ecosystem,
Yeah,
right? When you
love that.
have a group of people and you're in an ecosystem, and something comes in and changes the environment. So for example, I have a beautiful thing of like roses and climbing roses and clematis trellis over there. We took down a huge tree that was blocking their sun and was like at risk of falling on our house. And then all of a sudden, all of my vines died. They'd been thriving all summer long, but the tree was gone and they died. So we changed something about the environment
Yeah.
and my plants died. And we see this a lot with teams. Either someone who's kind of a linchpin personality leaves, or some new person comes in and kind of changes the dynamic. So when you're a leader and you've finally got it tuned in and you're really proud of your communication and your team's ability to gel, and someone either A leaves or someone else comes in, how do you handle that? Like, do you have to start over? Is it a reset? Is it a reimagining? What happens in that
Ooh,
situation?
I love it. If you're at the level of psychological safety and you have a culture code, you by then, and this is the practice, this is a big difference between management and leadership. People say, I'm a leader, and really they're a manager. If you're a leader, it is very hone it and you have buy in. So, what you're going to do is if someone leaves, you're going to have them part of the bringing on someone. And you're going to say, for the first 30 days, you have to remember this person has not been in our culture. So, what we want you to do is share the culture at its highest level. If you see something that's incongruent, go ahead and have a conversation around that, or just make a note, but there's no dropping the expectation. It's that we're going to bring them up, but it takes some time. So you give it, let's notice the first 2 weeks. Then let's go 30 days. And it's giving people permission to learn your culture. And about by 90 days, if you do this very methodical, that person will hear from other people and they will say, and this happens all the time, they'll say, I just, I feel something different in this culture. It's very clear that I needed to stop. I can't gossip. I don't gossip anymore. I trust that people, if somebody has something to say, they're going to say it in a feed forward. There's no such thing as, can I offer you criticism? There's not, that phrase is ever used. And I feel compelled to grow because this is a culture that inspires me to learn the language. And that's what we see so often. There's no falling down of the culture, but there is a transition of bringing somebody into the wave and helping them understand, like, this is what it looks like.
I'm over here taking like furious notes because you said three things that I just want to like highlight as mic drop moments that I think people really need to think about. So one, you said the difference between managers and leaders is that leaders have buy-in. And I think that that is so important because a lot of people will say, "Well, I'm a leader of my department or I'm a leader of my team." And then when I ask them, like what initiative are they most proud of or what thing has challenged their team that they've really worked through, and then you see like the lights are on but nobody's home because they can't
Yes.
think of anything.
And
And so, like, we see that all the time, right?
all
But if you have buy-in, you're a leader. And I think that's a really nice distinction, a simple distinction, because too many people confuse the leadership as an active quality versus you've been given a role and it's not the same.
it's totally different. Totally different. Yeah. So leadership means that you have built the skill of communicating, listening, and acknowledging. So you have buy-in. A manager means I have a role, and most people use those interchangeably. I did a
Yeah,
PhD in it just to make sure that they're very different. They're like two different planets apart. So
yeah,
one is somebody cares so much about um, building people up that they're going to develop themselves. The other one is I care so much about how I'm being seen. I want to roll. There's a big
right.
difference.
You might be a leader who is also a manager, but just because you're a manager doesn't mean you're a leader.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The
Good.
other thing that you said, that seems to be a common theme in these conversations, you said permission to learn your culture. And I think that that's really important for us as leaders to understand is that sometimes people need permission or need to feel like they have permission to make mistakes, to step into new opportunities, to not be perfect at what they are doing. And I think we have to like openly give that permission and not just assume it's implied because you don't know what situation they're coming from if they're joining your team. Like they might have come from a super micromanaged situation where the boss was over the shoulder and that's that they have to almost shed that
Oh,
trauma, I guess is the
it
right
is.
word.
Yeah. Yeah. They, so when we say transparency, leaders are transparent. It doesn't mean we're like just being dry. What it means is we know how to navigate people into our culture. So you want to think about exactly where might have they come from? Ask some good questions. What have you come to learn as leadership for you? How do you know that people are noticing you in the culture? That is giving them permission to share with you where they're coming from, and then it allows you to know how to help them move forward. That, yeah.
The other kind of like mic drop moment that I think we are most likely going to leave it on is you said that people need to feel something on their team. The idea that like in this on this team we, don't gossip, and on this team we, give feedback directly, and on this team we take accountability. Like all of those things that you mentioned, but you used the word feel something. And I think that that is so profound because they need to be able to feel it, whether or not they can articulate what makes your team different than other teams or what your team's approach to things is. They can, if they can feel it,
Mhm.
then they will understand it. And eventually they'll be able to articulate it, but they have to feel it first.
Yeah. And that is what we call is generous authority. It means you have led from the heart. They feel it. And that piece that you said, it, they embody it. It's so true to them that it generates, and that's what leads to buy-in. I
So,
own this part. Yeah.
so thinking about all of the incredible people that you know or aspire to know, who is leading the charge? Who is taking back Monday?
Well, where I'm at now, actually, Michael Singer is taking back Monday. I love his response to being responsible for our triggers. Stop making the world a more difficult piece. Stop taking revenge. Start seeing it as a compassionate place, because whatever we choose to see is what we're going to see. Is there still things that are wrong? Yes. But I love that fact that it is about in our leadership roles, in our roles with our team. let's stop projecting things that are negative and let's start figuring out it's really a trigger from the past. How can we raise each other up? And so that is where I'm guided to say, this is who's taking Monday back in a way that is very authentic, very doable, and so empowering.
And Dr. D, if someone is really connecting with you, they want to learn more, they want to learn more about neurocommunication, where can they find you online?
Awesome. If you go to stuckcycles.com and you could we give you a free inventory. There's also a discovery call there. If you want to go directly to me and bypass the inventory, go to stuckcycles.com and click on just talk to Dr. D. And I'd be happy to see where you're at in your life and what is the most prominent thing you want to see differently. And that's where we would start.
Thank you so much for joining me on Taking Back Monday. This was a fascinating conversation that I think is really going to help a lot of people.
Thank you, Alyssa. And thank you for doing this work because people need to hear it.
Thanks for joining us on Taking Back Monday, where we say goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to meaningful and fulfilling work. If you enjoyed today's episode, let's connect on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you found value here, share the podcast with your network. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us inspire more leaders to join the movement. Until next time, let's take back Monday.